Hello, hello, USU family, brothers and sisters all over the globe. So if you're joining us live, welcome live. If you'd like to put in the chat, where are you joining us from? We'd love to see. We're going to have the comments up. So good to see you. I see Paul is here. Let us know. And I am not going to wait any longer. I'm going to bring Dr. Linda Backman up so that we can get started. I'm so excited, Linda, to have you back here today to talk about this interview where we talked about the three different soul types. Just we're getting comments daily. It's really started a real desire to dig deeper. So thank you for coming back.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So excited. And what I love about doing this here and on YouTube is this will be here forever. If you're watching later, anytime, you can always leave your question and we'll do our best to get back to you. So all right, let's just for like someone who's like, wait, tell me again, what do you do and what are we talking about? Let's just do a quick overview around. We talked about the three different soul types. So I was thinking maybe just to level set going into the three soul types. You are an experienced past life regressionist, psychotherapist. You have an amazing background doing this. And then also talking about, that life after death. So just a few things. I'll let you kind of start there. And then I do have a lot of questions. And I'm going to say to anyone watching, put your question in the comments. We will get to as many as we can.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect. Okay. I'll dive in. But and while it's on my mind, I'll just say to the listeners, no question is too weird. No question is off base. Sometimes people think, oh gosh, is Julie going to think this is a strange question? Please, people, don't think anything is strange. So, okay. So I'm a psychologist by training. And I've been a psychologist for, I don't know, I've stopped counting, 45, 46 or whatever, however many years. I've been guiding soul level regression, not just past life regression, but soul level regression for about 28, 29 years. That's how I've learned about what happens at the end of a past life, what happens when we transition out of the body, where do we come from as a soul, how do we plan our lives. As some of you have already listened to my previous time with Julie, there are three types of souls that come to Earth, and I call that soul origin. I like to call it the overriding thing, maybe this will help people, is what I call soul design. And I actually have a new book coming out in 2025 entitled Soul Design. So soul design means what's your soul origin? What past lives are affecting you now? What are the overriding intentions of your current life? So who are you as a soul and why are you here? And that is what I focus on with clients, so that we understand ourselves and understand our unique qualities and skills and challenges and gifts and learnings and all of that. So I hope that's a good enough, Julie, thumbnail sketch of me and what I do. Yeah.
Love it. And I want to say this is actually it's called the Divine by Design series. It's so funny that you said that. And so this is in addition to the USU podcast. I'm going to be doing live interviews here. We're starting early, all of 2025. I have an amazing lineup of bringing some of my favorite conversations and guests back where we can have live conversations and you can ask questions. So you, Dr. Linda, you're the first of the Divine by Design series that we're going to be doing here live, and love that about the soul design or soul origin. Let's if you could do the quickest overview. We talked about three different types of souls that you've seen in your almost 30 years of doing this work. Earth-based, interplanetary, angelic. Those were the three. We've been talking about that. But for someone who may forget, maybe just like a tiny soundbite about each one and how you might have a sense of what yours is, at least in this lifetime.
Okay, good. Okay. So Earth-based souls, and so that people don't think I'm saying earth-bound souls, because that's a whole different term in the spiritual world. So I'm saying earth-based souls. The vast majority of humans on the earth, souls incarnate on Earth, are earth-based souls. So what does that mean? That means your soul was designed to primarily incarnate on Earth, and your soul comes to Earth. It's like going to school. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, boy, what did I sign up for to learn? But so an earth-based soul is a soul that almost exclusively incarnates on the earth time after time after time to grow and evolve. We'll talk more about this, but we'll talk about life purpose and free will, which kind of adds into that. So that's an earth-based, or just to make it simple, EB soul. Then there are two other souls that at times choose to come to Earth. And some of them do and some of them don't. One of those other two is an interplanetary soul. That's my term that came through regression. But listeners, you can exchange that term, call it ET soul, call it starseed. I just was given the term interplanetary years ago. So an interplanetary soul agrees to come to Earth. And again, if they choose and if they agree, they come and embody on Earth basically because interplanetary or IP souls that come to Earth come from advanced, experienced, healthy cultures somewhere in the greater celestial realm. We'll talk more about it, but could be a planet, could be a star system, could be interdimensional energy. So that's an IP or interplanetary soul. Then the other type of soul that might choose to come to Earth is an angelic realm soul, or what I call AR. So EB, IP, AR, angelic realm soul. Angelic realm souls come from the angelic realm. They serve source, and they serve the pure energy. The words don't do it justice, but they serve the pure energy of love and compassion. So we have some angelic realm souls on Earth. IP and angelic realm souls are here in moderately small numbers and not large numbers. So hopefully that kind of gives it a thumbnail picture.
All right, so we're gonna, and I made a mistake, it's AR, not AS, but we've got the three types of souls. We've got the angelic souls, interplanetary souls, the earth-based souls. Those are kind of the three main that you've seen when you've been doing the soul life level regressions, the soul level regressions, that you've seen these come. Lots of questions that have come up about this. I think we're going to dive in. And of course, anyone listening, put your question in the chat. I've been pulling them. I mean, I think we're at 1,000 now. We've gotten a lot of comments and questions.
Great.
One of the questions that has come up many, many times, by the way, we talked about, I know when I was on there, I was like, I feel like something about myself is not earth-based. And I thought maybe angelic, and you said interplanetary. And then that got a lot of discussion, people weighing in like, no, Julie, you seem angelic. No, could you be both? So then the question started coming up. Could you be, and I had a sense, but I'd love to hear from you. Could anyone listening be all three or two, or tell us about that? Is it possible to be more than one?
And maybe I'll, in a bit, Julie, I'll toss out just some ways of trying to figure that out, even without regression. But yes, I've learned about the three types through client after client, through many, many years of guiding regression. The simple answer, some things are simple, some things are not, but the simple answer is no. You can't be two of the three or three of the three. And then there's let me put some context to that, or just some specifics. If you, meaning listeners, if you are an earth-based soul, and I'll just, claim it and name it, I am an earth-based soul. If you are an earth-based soul, and if you're spiritually oriented, which probably means everybody listening, I suppose, but if you're spiritually oriented, and if you're an earth-based soul, then you've been coming to Earth hundreds, if not 1,000 or more times, many, many, many times, because simple explanation, at least for now, is that we come into body to grow and evolve, but we have free will. So we can go against our life plans, and so we can make not the greatest choices. So we come back. Everybody knows that's karma. And so Earth-based souls are pretty familiar with life on Earth, life in the body, functioning within these human bodies. And oh my gosh, it's like I have to rein my thoughts in so as to not confuse people. But let me just say that if you're an earth-based soul, you have a higher self, and your higher self resides in the spiritual frequency tied to Earth, or what we might call the Earth's spiritual realm. And then, so if you're interplanetary, that means you might have been on Earth 50 times, 60 times, maybe 5 times. The fewer times you've been here, if you're interplanetary, the more complicated, is like what word to use, challenges, the more complicated it is to function in these bodies, these human bodies, because it's not what you're familiar with, and to function on Earth in the culture of Earth, in the atmosphere and energy of Earth. But you come from somewhere in that broad, I can't talk without my hands, but in that broad celestial realm that includes planets, stars, as I said earlier, interdimensional space. Usually you come from inside of the solar system that we narcissistic humans call the solar system, because it's the solar system that includes Earth. So more than likely, if you're IP, you come from somewhere, when we can talk more about that if people want to, somewhere within probably the solar system. If you're angelic, you work directly with Source. You directly serve God, the divine, great spirit. Another Eastern term is the Manu, but probably the most broad-based term for people in their understanding is Source. You serve Source. You're an ambassador of the divine, healthy energy of love and compassion from Source. So your higher self resides in the spiritual frequency tied to Source. So again, I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I'm like, oh gosh, so many more questions for myself, I know. And I'm going to go through some of these that I've pulled. And of course, if you're watching live, you feel free to ask your question, put it in the comment. We can see those. I will share those with Dr. Linda. So let me ask you this, because this was an interesting one that also brought up a lot of questions. We talked about some of the most well-known master teachers, right? So we have Jesus. We didn't talk about Buddha. Let's start there. And you said, for example, that he would have been an earth-based soul, even though the mission, and Mother Teresa, I believe, was another example of an earth-based soul, where the mission might have looked similar, or the work in the world looks similar to an angelic-based realm soul, yet is the higher self, that's different. The higher self is in the earth realm versus the angelic realm. Maybe you can, I know we're splitting hairs, but share a little more about that and the differences there.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Julie, even though I know what you're saying, we're splitting hairs, but people are trying to understand. So I think it's the best way is to be as specific as we can. So here's what makes it, I think, a bit confusing for people. So, and we can talk about any of these souls that we start thinking about, that we believe or have the hunch that they're highly advanced souls. So I'll pick a couple of them. And so the one that broad-based on the earth, we call this soul Jesus, except that I always want people to think about when that soul was in body pre-crucifixion, that soul's name wasn't Jesus. That's a name given to that soul post-crucifixion. Jesus is a Greek word. So what was that soul's name? A lot of you probably know. That soul's name was Yeshua, ben, son of Joseph. So Yeshua was the first name of that actual person. So I like to talk about it as the Yeshua soul, because in a way, then it takes it, it doesn't have to be contextualized, tied to religion. And so Yeshua, that soul is a highly evolved soul, is what we would call an ascended master, or that's the common terminology we use in spirituality. That soul has many, many, many lives on earth pre-Yeshua. But here's what makes it a bit confusing, because some people might say, well, isn't Yeshua tied to source? And so isn't Yeshua probably angelic? So the Yeshua soul, and I know this from years of regression and multiple regressions, Yeshua is an earth-based soul. But when we get to the point, which any of us can reach high levels of evolution, because some advanced souls, some ascended masters do incarnate. When we get to the point of being so highly evolved, then the soul, the higher self of, and actually in a minute, I'll define higher self so people comprehend that as well as I hope they will. Yeshua has had experience at the soul level, working with angelic souls in the higher realm, and working at times with IP souls in the broad celestial realm. And that's why people start thinking, no, Yeshua's got to be angelic. Or Mother Mary, that's another soul we could talk about. Mother Mary's has to be angelic. My understanding is no. Yeshua, Mother Mary, might be useful in a minute, Julie, to talk about some advanced souls that some people don't, we might say, contextualize with religion. So I hope that's a bit more clarity.
Yeah. And there's like, it's so great. Every time you share, I'm like, oh, there's like 5 more questions under that. Let's go into, I will come back to some of what you just said. Before we do that, I want to ask both for you to clarify the higher self, what you've experienced that to mean. And then one of the questions that has come through over and over again is it possible for twin flames? What do you have to say about twin flames and their souls? So we'll stay in this, like, defining the souls, the higher self, and then we're gonna branch out. We've got a lot more.
Okay, that's fine. We can certainly branch out.
Yeah, we're gonna go deep.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, so higher self, what does that mean? And to be honest, for me, this is a really important concept for people to think about, even in their everyday life. So I'll just use myself as an example, easiest way, because you can all see I'm, a soul in body here. So when I was born, when any of you were born, when the cord was cut, when you were birthed from your mother's body, birthed from her womb, and the cord was cut, and you were viable and living and breathing, what causes us to be alive is a portion, a fractal, a slice of your soul energy, and it's holographic. So it's almost like taking a pie, and if the totality of the pie is 100% of your soul energy, when you're born, each time, a slice of that pie resides within you and causes you to live and breathe. And while you're alive, the remainder of your soul energy exists, resides, is located where your soul comes from. Because I'm earth-based, my higher self resides in the spiritual realm tied to earth. If you're IP, your higher self resides somewhere, could be on a planet, could be in a star system, could be spacecraft, that happens, could be non-dense, something interdimensional. And if you're angelic, your higher self resides in the angelic realm, which is a fairly small group of of souls. So I would say to everybody, communicate, use your intuition. Julie's an awesome teacher about intuition. Use your intuition. Talk to your higher self. I often say, talk to him, talk to her, not because like Linda's higher self is female. It just gives you a kind of something to latch onto. I talk to my higher self at times. She is the total compilation of all of the soul evolution that I've gained over hundreds, if not probably more than hundreds of years for all of us, thousands of years. So let your higher self be one of your guides. Yeah. Yeah, it's an important piece.
I love that. I think this is really important. I want to go into, let's come back to the twin flames in a minute, because I think now that we're in these three, what I'm sensing, sometimes I can hear the question. So if you're watching and you want to ask a question, put it in the comments. I should be able to see it. I hope I do. I should. What I want to ask you, Linda, maybe to go through the characteristics, if there is such a thing. So I remember when we did this, I shared very vulnerably, I've had these memories of like, it's hard to explain it, but it's very flowy pink energy. Like I'm there as well. And I also want to say thank you for talking about time and the idea of holographic, how we are the aspect of being holographic and time is not the way we think of it, which we can come back to as well. But let's talk about the characteristics, because I've had a lot of comments and questions around, wait a minute, well, like I thought it was angelic, but maybe I'm in. So, and I want to say we are going to also at some point, if you're comfortable, I do want to talk about the shift that I think is being called for here around duality to non-duality and how we're all connected. But for now, I think this is really helpful just in understanding where we've come from in this lifetime. What are some of the characteristics for Earth-based souls, for interplanetary souls, and for angelic realm souls?
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually going to work backwards. I'm not sure why, but my guides must be telling me to do that. Okay, so I'm going to work backwards. Angelic realm, AR souls. And this is a little difficult, and I obviously love for people to learn through regression, because then you're a little bit tuned out, slightly out of body, but still, I can easily give examples of characteristics. So if you're, and everybody, as you listen to this, just inside of yourself, because nobody's asking you to answer questions, be as honest with yourself as you can. If you're angelic realm, if you're AR, your attitude about life, your approach to life is very, very right-brained and is very, very, big heart, very accepting. And I'm not an angelic realm soul. Sure, do I have heart and do I have love and compassion? But I'm not angelic realm. When I meet, sometimes I can like sniff out in the interview, even when I do, before I do a regression, I begin to get hunches in my head. I don't share them with the client, but it's like, if I'm meeting an angelic realm soul, and not 24/7 as I explain these characteristics, but more often than not, if I'm meeting an angelic realm soul, they are caring and usually non-judgmental, almost to a fault, not really to a fault, but there's just this love and caring and acceptance that is just almost verges on letting themselves be overly vulnerable to emotions and caring. It makes me think, I always use an example of a particular client that I've worked with more than once. This is a woman, but you can be angelic realm and be a man, be in a male body. And you can be gay, you can be straight, you can be trans. I mean, it has nothing to do with that. This particular woman I mean, that notion of, she would give the shirt off her back. She really would just about give the shirt off her back to anyone and put their needs first. If you go to her house during a holiday, and this woman is in my age range, she has children, she has grandchildren. If you go to her house during any holiday, whether it's I'm not just talking about Christmas or Easter or Halloween, I'm talking about St. Patrick's Day. I'm talking about, add in all the many different holidays. Her house is decorated from stem to stern with elves and colors and, all kinds of stuff you would go and buy, plates and ribbons and baubles and all of that. She's just a deeply, deeply, deeply caring woman. Now, I'm going to add in one more quick piece. We can take this farther, Julie, if there's time. The angelic realm is headed by the archangels. That is not a religious it is a religious concept, but it's beyond a religious concept. The archangels are real. They exist. They are the coordinators of the angelic realm. We can talk more about that. And the lead archangel, as people might guess, is Archangel Michael. And I will tell you, everybody, Archangel Michael does incarnate on Earth. That particular archangel is one of the few that embodies on Earth to aid humanity. So anyway, those are characteristics of AR souls. IP souls are probably the most, I'm going to use this term, go out on a limb, quirky. IP souls can be, and I don't mean that as a judgment, IP souls can be quirky. They can have very unique style of hair, very unique style of clothing. And they are often people that struggle with allergies, sometimes autoimmune disorders, intestinal, GI struggles, dietary struggles, sometimes on the spectrum, ADHD. Why? Because they don't come from Earth, and they come from places where often communication isn't verbal, where the kind of relationships are perhaps caring and appropriate and healthy, but different than Earth. So IP souls tend to be extremely unique. Think about, I won't name any names, but think about people that are either, actors, actresses, musicians, and think about some of the ones that are very unusual in how they appear. Yeah. And so that's why I'm spacing the name, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm thinking about Jelly Roll. I'm pretty darn sure that person, I've never regressed him, is interplanetary. So yeah.
And then Earth-based, which you've talked a little bit about, that I've always loved being around Earth-based people because I don't feel that as my background, and there's like a grounded earthiness. I mean, I'm laughing. And you said 95% of human beings on planet right now are Earth-based.
That's right. That's right. And people, yes, I do spiritual work, but maybe I'm an example for people. I'm an Earth-based soul. There are times when people say, well, Linda, you do this spiritual work, but you come across as pretty grounded. Well, am I always grounded? Of course not. But so Earth-based souls, and even highly spiritual Earth-based souls, such as myself, tend to function somewhat more easily on this planet. But just to add one more quick thing, Julie, to what you just said, about 95% of humans are Earth-based souls. About, let's just call it, somewhere between 90 and 95% of humans are moderately evolved Earth-based souls. Then that 5, maybe 6% of people on our planet that are more experienced souls. And a lot of those are listeners, because that's why you guys are interested in spirituality. Then take that 5 to 6% of more experienced souls in body on earth, and then you have to split it apart into EB, IP, and AR. And that 5 to 6% is about 50% EB. And then the other 50% of that, I know, confusing, 5 to 6%. Split that apart into IP and AR. I'm going to say one more quick thing. We can take this farther. My guides have been telling me lately that more IP souls are being prepared. They have to be prepared to come to Earth. Why? Because we have a lot of challenges, a lot of complications on our planet. And it's my understanding that the guides of Earth are wanting to bring more IPs through the birth process, mostly through the birth process, to Earth.
Beautifully said. Linda C is asking, would you know if you are an AR or an IR? If you're an angelic realm or interplanetary, would you know that?
Probably yes. Spirit, my guides keep talking to me. For those of you that think you might be AR, sometimes when I work with an AR soul in regression, I'm working with someone who a part of their life is still rather tied to conventional organized religion. And there are people that say, well, I'm so spiritual and I'm not into dogma. I'm not into you should and you must and you can't and blah, blah, blah. And you'll be punished, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of religious dogma. But a lot of angelic souls are so tied to the love of source that fits for them in some ways tied to organized religion. And if so, that's okay. I mean, that's just who you are and what you're drawn to.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting. It's a great question. And it's funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom, I don't want to use this time even saying this, but I'm like, this is explaining. I mean, my mom, when you were talking about somebody who is in love with humanity and people and giving the shirt off their back, like almost childlike. I mean, she's
Yeah.
still here. And, she's watching, I would say this to her face, she's doesn't play in the same arena as most human beings. People that meet her are like, I've never met anyone like this. Like, this is somebody who childlike loving to the level of it's beautiful. I think, it's been interesting as a child of that, but I'm thinking like, oh, that as you were describing, I'm like, oh, that sounds a lot like my mother. Interesting.
Julie, I might just quickly add the woman I was referring to, trying to be very camouflaged and not out her, but the woman, the AR client I was describing, this woman loves kids, was once a school teacher, is very involved. I mean, I'm involved with my grandchildren, but not like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's just very child oriented, because what's the beauty of children? I mean, it's the magic they believe in. And, they're just still so open to, they're still letting their past lives and their soul just easily come forth.
So interesting. My mom was a music teacher and like took on my children. She's a grandma. Like it's very helpful, because she does not fit into what would be considered, normal human behavior, and just in her reaction and way of being, which is not a good or bad thing. Just growing up, I'd always be like, wow, you are floating and you're doing, this is different. This is different. You are reacting, people are reacting to you differently, but always that childlike loving wonder. Very interesting. So I'm going to ask again about the twin flames. And then I see we have another question, which I appreciate. And I will get to that next. What about twin flames? Does that exist?
Twin flame. And, another topic, I'm just going to put a pin in this because I think it's important to talk about, is divine feminine and divine masculine. And I think that somewhere along the way, if we have time today, that'd be useful to talk about. Twin flame. So here's the confusion. The twin flame, and then so that's kind of an overused terminology in spirituality. And then another overused and related term is soulmate. Okay. So and what's hard, Julie, is that different spiritual teachers use the term twin flame to mean different things. When I use the term twin flame, and it relates to soulmate, a twin flame is a soul you've known over and over and over and over, lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. You've had so many life experiences with them, and they're not necessarily the love of your life. They could be, but they're not necessarily the love of your life. They are simply a soul. I mean, I think about this in terms of, I have grandchildren. One of my grandchildren is a soul I've had innumerable lives with. And I just feel, I mean, I love all my grandchildren, of course, but there just is, there's a commonality. So twin flame means not necessarily the soul you've had the most lives with, but a soul you've had lots of lives with, because you can have two or three if that's the definition of twin flame. So soulmate's the same thing. It's like there isn't one soul on this planet with whom you'd have a relatively satisfying romantic relationship. There are many people that, they're married, maybe they have a good, comfortable marriage or comfortable relationship. That spouse passes, perhaps, and then sometimes they find someone else, years later, and it's like they're very happy with that someone else. So
beautiful. Yeah, so powerful. We will come back to the feminine and the masculine, divine feminine and masculine. I see even a question around that. I want to ask, when I saw this, well, actually, there was an interesting question about blood type. Does blood type have anything to do with soul type? I saw that and thought that was fascinating. And I thought, no, but maybe you would know more.
Well, the best answer, I think, to that question is, if you're IP, then you probably have some rather unique bodily issues, and sometimes, as I've already spoken a bit about, also body challenges, health challenges, like diet. Like a lot of IP souls, the diet that works for them, the nutritional program that works for them, can be very, very narrow. Sometimes they're lactose intolerant, they're vegetarian, they're gluten-free, because they don't normally live in and exactly, and nourish their bodies. It's like, I have a moderately narrow kind of diet, but I can manage. I mean, I don't eat meat, okay, but my diet is not so narrow. Or if I'm almost gluten-free, but if I eat some gluten, I'm not going to have a stomach ache for the next 24 hours. That's not the case for a lot of IPs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really helpful. Yeah. I'm just laughing as I drink my 50 ounces
your green juice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's made a huge difference. I've interviewed the doctor who healed her lupus with this, and thousands. I drink 50 ounces of this a day, for real.
So that's an important point, Julie, I think, is that when you say, I mean, I've had years of my life where I use like a powdered greens drink like that. I don't do it now, but I did for years. But it wasn't almost like required to keep either my blood sugar in the right place or my, whatever in the right place, as opposed to what you just said of, oh my gosh, it's made a gigantic difference. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'll actually make sure to link the interview with Dr. Goldner, because mine thyroid, actually, it's getting close to normal. This every day, 50 ounces. I mean, seriously, thousands of people that have probably similar to me who have these autoimmune things. I have this amount of greens. I mean, it's an intense amount of greens and flax, but I don't know why I'm sharing that. It's funny. I almost didn't bring this in the interview, and something said, no, bring it. And then I heard, no, put it up and show you, because I'm laughing, married to someone who is absolutely earth-based, absolutely, who it's just it's annoying, but it's okay. It's what it is. And I've learned to feel my best, to be able to do the work I want to do and to heal the way I can. This has really helped. Oh, that's so sweet, Thomas. Thank you. Yeah, this is goodbyelupus.com. I'll put it in the chat. Seriously, it's free. You can get the ingredients. I make it every day fresh, and it's a decision out of empowered. It's the name of my business, Empowered Living, because I don't feel, if I eat gluten, I am that person that feels like I have the flu for a day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Makes me,
Yeah. And that is almost, and maybe you already know this, Julie, but that's almost a sure sign you're not earth-based. Plus, and you already said this, usually if I'm working with someone and they're in a committed romantic relationship, and my client is EB or AR, almost always their partner is earth-based, because they need the stability and the grounding of an earth-based partner to help them in daily living function more easily. So usually, although, I'm thinking about a family I know with three children. So the mom is IP, the dad is earth-based, and they have three daughters from like age 20-ish down to 12 or 13. All three daughters are, I'm fairly sure, I've not regressed the daughters, are IP. So somebody in the family almost always is earth-based for grounding and stability.
This is explaining a lot for me. I'm sure others as well, but it's intuitive. It's kind of like I would not do well with another person like myself. It would be way too much. And I just will say in the comments, I put both the link to that interview and the website, because seriously, she gives this all for free. And for those of us who need this kind of grounding, I feel like I'm drinking earth. Now I've already drank. This is my second one of today. I already had 48 ounces. Yeah. So it's a real thing. What you're talking about it feels very real to me, at least. It's made a big difference.
And usually, and I'll just add, because here's an important piece, and I know, we keep going into some of these nuances, but I'm thinking about, so I have three grandchildren. I won't go off into a lot of details about them because that's not fair to them to out them very much. And they're all like, again, from age 19 down to age 16. Two of them, well, all three of them are earth-based souls, but two of the three have had a fair number of, let me say it differently. Two of the three have had a small number of IP incarnations. Those two have more physiological struggles than the other grandchild, who hasn't had very many, I don't think, IP incarnations.
Interesting. I want to talk a little bit about the ego and the role. This is going a little different. I'm just, I'm curious. So I'm also a big fan, and I study the Course in Miracles, and we bring that in a little bit as well. When I think of Earth, I think of the school of the ego. Here, and I'm curious, does the ego exist in the other realms in a different way? I would think not in the angelic realm. Can you talk a little bit about the reincarnations here? Is this about learning to overcome the ego? Like, what is the role of the ego and our soul this time? And I'm going to let you just roll with that, because I've just been doing a lot of deep dive in that, and I'm curious what you know.
I mean, this is what I love about these kind of conversations, because they're organic and they go where they need to go. And that is an awesome question. Let me see how to explain this, because it's complicated. So if we think about ego, everybody knows, I'm Dr. Linda Backman, so I'm a psychologist. I became a psychologist a long time ago, back in the 80s. But so when we're trained in formal psychology, there are two terms. One is ego, and the other is ego strength. Okay. And ego for most people, and I think that, Julie, it's what you're referring to. Ego means me, 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 me. It's like, yeah, ego's about my needs and me, and I have to shine, and I want to supersede you, perhaps, and blah, blah, blah. As opposed to, in psychology, the term ego strength means self-esteem, means belief in oneself, that you don't have to supersede somebody else or be better than somebody else. And this is tricky to try to describe, but ego strength does translate across the veil. So a soul, how can I say this? A soul is not necessarily at the soul level, at the higher self level. A soul is not necessarily going to try to say, I'm way better than soul to soul. So there's a discussion. Let's make a theoretical example. So higher selves do work together in teams to try to aid humanity. So let's just say there's 5 higher selves of fairly advanced souls brainstorming how to help humanity do a better job of taking care of our environment, of guiding souls to care for our environment. They're brainstorming, and all they can do is serve as guides, because they don't come down here and fix things directly. They guide, but they're going to have differences of opinion. So when they have ego strength, they're going to say, okay, I don't agree with 2 of the other 4 of you, because I think a better way to guide humans to help with climate change would be to do this. But it's not a hurtful, almost putting down the other higher self. It doesn't work that way. It's more speaking for what they believe, speaking for what they think will work, but it's not some abusive, I'm better than you, and I'm the smart one, and you're not the smart one. So I don't know, Julie, if that's clear enough, but that's my sense.
Yeah, it sounds like there are different aspects of it. When I think of Earth and the ego, and I think of, and for me coming in, and I know many here, some may be into A Course in Miracles, some not. I've been studying that for a bit, and
Right.
the idea of undoing the ego, right? We come here to undo the ego and remember, or and this is a question for you as well, the acknowledgement we never separated from the divine in the first place, that we're not separate, that we're all, and at least my understanding. And so that's the bigger picture. What I'm hearing is there's the ego that can lead to killing and to war and to abuse. And then there's the ego. I'm almost thinking of the golden shadow versus the dark shadow. That's what I'm hearing. Almost like, we have the parts of us that we hide that are the strength sides, and then there are parts that we don't, the darker shadows that are there to look at, to learn from, to integrate, at least is my understanding. And so curious, because one of the questions was, why do we keep coming back here to Earth? Like, Earth can be dense, it can be challenging, lots of ego. So I'll let you take this wherever you and your guides want to go, and maybe we can look into a little more about undoing the ego in a little bit. But I would love to hear, what do you think from that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things I can say, because I'm also, when you bring in what many people call ACIM, A Course in Miracles, I have had a collegial relationship with someone who was very close to the team that supported Helen Schuckman when Helen Schuckman was channeling ACIM. So I have a kind of a familiarity with that to a degree. So so why do we keep coming back? Let's go there. And this is a piece that becomes confusing for some people. Soul evolution happens in real time on this planet. Soul evolution, past, present, and future are not all happening at once. Sometimes people will say to me, Linda, I want to have a regression with you, but I don't need to know about my past lives because past, present, and future are all happening at one time. In regard to soul evolution, both individual soul evolution, like mine or Julie's or anybody's, and the evolution of a culture, like the human culture, our culture and our souls evolve sequentially, lifetime to lifetime, in real time. So in current life, I use myself again as an example. Before I came into body as Linda, I basically sat down and had a meeting with my spiritual guides. And with my spiritual guides, we said, we created what we might call a pre-birth script or a pre-birth blueprint for me, Linda, before I was born as an infant. And it's like, okay, what intentions, what continued evolution of your soul, the Linda soul, do you want to work on in this upcoming incarnation that ultimately became Linda? And so I agreed to work on something from, this, that, and the other thing from past lives of mine that needed to be improved. Now, when I get here, I can go against that. I can't go against whether I'm tall or short or light-skinned or dark-skinned or have green eyes or blue eyes or whatever, but I can go against my pre-birth blueprint. And then I think everybody knows what happens. You're going to plan another life. So why do we keep coming back? We keep coming back to grow and evolve. And then when we reach, if we want to, let's put soul evolution on a 10-point scale. So as a soul, if you reach, just to talk about it with numbers to make it clear, as a soul, if you've reached a level of, say, a 7, and certainly higher, even an 8, but if you've reached a 7 or an 8, you're coming body to still keep evolving and cleaning up karma and bringing your wisdom that you've learned, or what we call dharma, from past lives. But you've come to the point of being equally, if not more so, and here's the way I always put it, to be of service on this planet. How are you of service on this planet? I don't care whether it's taking a meal twice a week to your elderly neighbor, that's to be of service, or, you're doing something else. You're creating the green drink that, you're the person who created the drink that's helping, Julie and many, many others. But when we're a 7 and beyond, we come into body to be of service.
Super interesting. I'm reminded, actually, I did an interview years ago with Ainsley McLeod. I don't know if you know who he is, who does. And it coincides really, I think, very similarly to the different soul levels. And we were very clear, it's nothing to do with, because human brains go into levels and good, and it wasn't that at all. In fact, I actually think I remember him saying Mother Teresa, again, Earthbased Soul, was like a level 3. Just her mission to help humanity. It's like it shows up in different ways. But that's fascinating. my brain is like, all these neurons are wiring together to get, because I've been getting so many questions, comments, like, why are we back here? Why would anyone want to come back here? And it sounds like soul's evolution to be of service, and to bring more light. I don't know. That's what always comes to me.
I think it's like, we have to come back here because, I don't mean we're forced to come back here. That's not what I mean. But the only way that humanity will advance is through humans making healthy choices. It's up to us. It's not up. Source doesn't, excuse me, Source doesn't pull strings. Source isn't a puppeteer and says, okay, well, humans are tired of dealing with holes in the ozone. So, okay, I'm Source and I'm going to fix the holes in the ozone. No.
Yeah.
Humans have to decide what to do to eliminate emissions or that sort of thing. It is up to us. Yeah.
So a question for you, and we will go back to the divine feminine and masculine, but I do want to ask you, you talked about across the veil and this life after death and what you've seen. So, and before I go into that, my understanding is Source, the divine, is love and is light, and it's like there, that is the truth. And so fear and ego and all of these other things, it doesn't even exist in Source, meaning we have to raise ourselves in vibration and energy. So maybe to talk a little bit about, let me say it this way, across the veil, what have you seen? You've talked about life doesn't really end across the veil in death. And what is the experience you've received around divine Source and around what those who've done those regressions have experienced and shared with you?
Oh my gosh, that's a wonderful question and a big question.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say to listeners, yes, I do guide regression that is just guiding the client to whatever past life the client's guides want the client to learn about that relates directly to current life. But much more so over the course of lots and lots of years, I guide soul level regression where the client experiences past life scene by scene. We go all the way to the end of the past life. And then the client, with my support, but I'm not serving as a channel, the client is accessing their own material with my support. Then the client experiences that past life body no longer is functioning. They learn how did they die in that past life. And then the slice of soul, as what will happen for me, will happen for Julie, will happen for any of us. When I pass from this lifetime, this body's not going to function anymore. My soul energy is going to elevate out of my body. And it's almost like it sounds like a silly example, but like a homing pigeon, that slice of my soul elevates back to my higher self. And, like people can see this, that piece of soul steps back into my higher self. Sort of, it's almost like a pie where we put the slice back in the pie, the pie dish. And then the client, the regression continues, and the client connects with a guide, sometimes more than a guide. We ask questions to the guide about the client's current life, and the guide provides information. How did you plan your current life? Who are souls you've known before? What type, which of those 3 types of souls are you? Blah, 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 blah. So I can tell you, and I don't mean for this to sound arrogant, I believe I know what happens when we pass because I've experienced it with clients more times than I can count. I give just a really quick example. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's a personal story, but I love it. So when my mother passed about 10 years ago, and my mom was in her 90s, so she was much older. I left my mom's bedside one night. She almost was, in a coma at that point. When I came back into her room at the care facility where she was, instead of laying in the normal position in her bed, she was laying crosswise across her bed. Now, my mother was not an overtly spiritual woman, and that's fine. She was old school, and she wasn't into the kind of stuff that I'm into. But we had 24-hour staff with her at that point. hospice care in this senior facility. So my mom wasn't speaking. I didn't know whether she was in a coma or asleep, but she was still breathing. I walked over to the night staff and who was sitting in a chair, and I said, "Did you move my mom? She was laying with her head on the pillow when I left last night, and now I'm back, whatever it is, 10 hours later or something like that. Did you turn her body so that she was laying across the bed?" And the woman, the nurse said, "No, we didn't." But the nurse said, "I've been here all night. Periodically, your mother would wake up or sort of rouse, not fully wake up, rouse and start rocking her hips. And she said it took all night, but by this point in the morning, maybe it was 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, your mom rotated her body by herself to face the only window in the room." And so my mother passed, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 hours later. Many cultures believe the soul goes out the window. My mom was facing directly, like her feet were toward the window and her face was like looking at the window. She rotated her body automatically. And I'll just never forget that, because to me, it just was so telling about the natural process that guides the soul to prepare to leave the body.
Wow. That's beautiful. There's a mystical element and there's like such a natural element. Like it's just, I don't remember being born, how that happens. I had 2 myself and I remember that experience. That was
Sure. Yeah.
not as fun, but really fun once they were out. But, it's like, I
course.
remember thinking, how is this even happening? And are they going to stay in here? Because I can't do this anymore. Just the natural, it's beautiful. That's a really powerful, beautiful story. Yeah, really beautiful. Let's talk about the feminine, the masculine. You mentioned that earlier. I would love to circle back to that around, personally, and I'm curious, Linda, I actually think you said this earlier and sometimes I know and it maybe put in the comment if you do too, I get caught up sometimes even with the name for God, for the divine, neither he nor she works for me. And so I'm like, and then it doesn't feel very sacred. And it's like, beloved, divine. I mean, I have like 50 names that I just circle through, but let's talk about the gender, divine, feminine, masculine, and then what you've experienced through these, through the soul level regressions where you've gotten a better understanding of what this is all about.
Well, I think in my humble opinion, it's one of the struggles on our planet. And so I'll say a bit for listeners. And when I talk about divine feminine, divine masculine, of course, I'm not talking about being a woman or being a man necessarily. So it's not about, what is your body? What gender is your body? And obviously we live in a world of people in an LGBTQ kind of advanced way of looking at humanity. But the struggle that we label divine masculine, divine feminine, just to put words to it, I think that's a struggle on our planet in the sense that divine masculine would be healthy assertion, healthy forward moving in your life, healthy speaking up for your needs, or even think about that just left brain. What is left brain? Left brain means cognitive. It means 2 + 2 is 4. It means intelligence and left brain concepts. And we need left brain. I mean, how do medical people diagnose? If they're going to diagnose strep throat, they culture your throat and they use a medical procedure to grow a culture. That's all very left brain, and we need that in our culture. But right brain, or what we might label as divine feminine, means how do you feel, and what are your needs? And I notice it at times. I hate to bring anything. I'm not going to go down any kind of political, rabbit hole here. But sometimes you'll see the female members of a government being more collegial, being more collaborative, and not so, these are my decisions and my opinion. And so we don't have a balance of right brain, left brain. I think, that's not to say that Julie doesn't work to balance that, or I don't work to balance that, or listeners don't work on that. But from a cultural standpoint on our planet, we don't have a left brain, right brain, in my opinion, healthy balance.
What about interplanetary realms and angelic realms? Let's extrapolate. So this idea of the feminine and the masculine, does that even pertain? I have a feeling around that, but I'm just curious what you've seen from, the AR and the IP souls.
Yeah, what pops in my mind, Julie, as you ask that. So let's talk about AR for just a second. So remember that the angelic realm is coordinated by source.
Yep.
And I could say a little bit more also of what I've learned about source. What is source? I
Yes,
could say some things about that. But so think about love and compassion. So what does that mean? Is that really just purely right-brained? My sense is no. It's like something that would be loving and compassionate. Let's just say, let's see if I can come up with a good example. So if I'm operating from love and compassion, that means at times I'm going to put somebody else's needs first. That doesn't mean I'm going to do that 24/7, because that's not healthy either. But love and compassion means sometimes I choose to not take care of something I thought I needed to handle today in my schedule, and I let someone else's, my neighbor, my friend, my family member. Love and compassion is not purely right-brained. And so source is guiding us to balance our needs with the needs of others. Our needs have to matter. We have to take care of our own needs in order to be healthy. But we also need at times to be able to set aside our needs and put somebody else's needs in front of our own. To me, that's love and compassion. And it isn't just right-brained or left-brained. Then, Julie, you ask about IP, and this part is fascinating and broad, so it's hard for me to explain. When I'm working with a client that's IP, one of the things we almost always learn, one of the things that client almost always learns in the regression, is not just that they're IP, but where do they come from as a soul? What's the culture like where the IP soul's higher self originates? And oftentimes the higher self still resides in that location. What's that culture like? So there are far more IP home locations. I call it home base. An IP soul almost always has a home location in the spiritual realm, in the greater celestial realm. Some of those home locations, well, let me say this differently. The culture, the nature of those home locations is all different. If there are, 10,000 home bases, just to pull a number out of the air, they're all different. Some are more science oriented. Some are more nurturance oriented. They're all different because we need all of that, all that capability. Sorry, we need all that wisdom to make up healthy culture. Yeah.
Beautifully said. I'm curious, we've seen such a rise of channeling. This is just now I'm getting questions myself intuitively. still have others. And I know we're going to wrap soon. This is just like so fun. We could keep going. And I'm going to say to anyone watching live, if you have a burning desire question, put it in the chat because we have time for probably one or two. But I am curious around, oh my gosh, I was just asking you, that just took me off track for a second, but I know I was talking about, what did I ask you? The purpose. Oh my gosh, I never do that. That's so funny. Oh, with the different types of souls and discovering that. And I don't know if you know what I was saying. That's okay. Maybe I wasn't supposed to ask that. That's okay.
That would be my sense, is to just let it be. And if it's
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's rare.
it-
That's rare. I'm gonna let that go. With higher self. So, because I'm thinking for those of us watching, anyone watching, we know like attracts like. So either probably in the 5% or earth-based with a real desire to be of service here. I just know if you're here, if you're watching now, or I just know that's what we're here to do. Calling in your higher self, your guide. We talked about your guides, and I think of, okay, we talked about Yeshua earlier with being an earth-based, and I would imagine now is in the angelic realm, or somebody, I don't know, maybe I know Archangel Michael, Gabriel, we know that's in the angelic realm. What would a guide be in the interplanetary realm or earth-based? Does somebody who incarnated, who let's say has learned their lessons and has not come back as a human, could be a guide? Maybe you can sort through. I feel like I just gave you a pile of laundry and I'm like, here are the darks and the lights and the colors we don't know what to do with. I'm going to let you sort through and just say what's coming to mind.
There's so many that I totally get, Julie. I mean, this topic is so broad. We could go off, you and I could do this for 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever. There's so many topics. Yeah. Here's what I'm getting out of what you just said is almost like it's saying, Linda, talk about guides, talk about how a soul becomes a guide, talk about how it's determined that a soul that a guide would be the guide for a certain soul. And now I'm remembering also, so I'm writing myself a quick note on over here on the right. We were going to talk just briefly about what is source. So we can come back to that. So guides. Okay. As we evolve as a soul, one of the primary goals of evolving, besides aiding humanity, one of the primary goals of evolving is to become a guide. That is why it's just sort of like, I always hate to use university teaching because lots of people don't have to go to university to have a capable life and capable skills. But think about it. So someone who is going to go off to university, and they have a high school diploma and they're going to the university. Okay, so they start as a freshman in college. And if they want to go beyond that, and I'm just using this, everybody, I hope people understand this. I'm using this as an analogy. So someone who's going to gain a graduate degree and then be able to teach starts as a freshman. And ultimately, most people who teach have a master's or a doctoral degree. And so, or, you could liken this to being, I forget, I think it's called, like a master electrician or master plumber. It's all the same. It's like you start off not being able to be a master plumber or a master electrician. But as you learn and as you apprentice, or as you go from freshman to sophomore to junior to senior, blah, blah, you ultimately become capable of teaching. That's how a guide evolves. We're all moving in that direction. Some spiritual guides no longer incarnate. Some spiritual guides both serve as guides and still incarnate. And then just one other quick comment about it, so as to not go on and on about it. Our spirit, we all have at least a spiritual guide. We're never without a guide, or call it guardian angel, call it what you want, but we're never left alone without a guide. And our spiritual guide, if we're a 3, on the scale of evolution, our guide is a 6 or a 7. If we're a 7, our guide is an 8 or a 9. And so the guide pertains to our level, but we always have a guide. And yes, there are some of these classic souls that we're talking about, Yeshua, Mother Mary, Archangel Michael, who serve as guides. But there are lots of souls that don't have these kinds of familiar names that serve as guides. And then I'm going to add one more just very quick piece because it always is asked. Someone in your life, your favorite grandparent, your favorite wise neighbor, your favorite mentor may well have come into your life to be a guide on the human level, not just on the spiritual level.
Beautiful. So 2 last questions. One, I want to thank Linda C, who was like, Julie, you were asking about channeling. So I'm going to ask you that question. And I think we will end about source. I think it's a really beautiful way. And Linda, I'm going to say, when you talk about source, if you want to add, I always call them heart flares here, anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't ask you that comes up. But what I was going to ask, thank you, Linda C. Thank you. So many more people are channels and channeling. And let me say this, I understand at all times, really, you could say, what are we? We're all channeling something, but I'm talking about a higher consciousness, that an angelic, a guide. I can tell the difference. I can feel the difference from watching it, observing it, listening to it, and myself even. And I'm curious your take on that from the work you've done. So I'm going to hand that to you, and then let's wrap with, like, tell us about source. I feel like, tell us, Linda, let's come around the bedside table. Tell us about source, because I think it's a beautiful way to bring us all home, literally, figuratively.
Yeah. So home to source. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Channeling. I'm pausing only because I could give you my quick and sort of left brain response, but I just paused for a second and instantly I got this download from Spirit, from my guides. Here's what my guides are telling me. They're saying more people are channeling. And of course, remember, we have channels that channel guidance and higher level support and direction. And then, of course, we have mediums who are people who can talk to souls on the other side and give you messages from souls on the other side. So let's talk about channeling. My guides are saying, I'm trying to say this so it's clear because I can feel it. There is such a need for humanity to keep growing and evolving and to move beyond war, dominance, better than, lack of equality, blah, blah, blah. That more incarnate souls, more people who are intuitively capable of channeling, and there's a lot more of those of you listening, lots and lots of people, including some of you that are listening that are not either, making it known that you have the ability to channel. We need more wisdom from a higher place. And I think that's why channeling has become more common. Yeah. So to finish with source, here's what I have learned through many regressions. What is source? First of all, let me just say, I'm talking about source, God, the divine, great spirit, whatever word you want to use, that seeks to guide Earth, that seeks to guide humanity. I have learned through many clients, sort of cross-referencing what I learned from clients, that source is a group soul. It's made up of 4 highly, almost inexplicably advanced souls that work together because they have different skills and different experience. And they work as a unit to guide earth. And I've been told many times that source, I had a client just the other day who didn't know what I knew about source. And she said something about the four, it wasn't aspects, but she said there, and it wasn't voices, but it was just like the four components of great wisdom that work together to serve as source. And source is, I know because I hear about this a fair amount, source is constantly working to create new ways of advancing humanity in a healthy way. So that's my knowledge of what is source.
Beautiful, Linda. So before we wrap, I will just let you and your guides come together and, you know, anything maybe that either I didn't ask you or that's feeling like a message to share. And it could be about anything we've talked about around the 3 soul types, around across, life after death and across the veil. It could be anything. I will leave it to you to just bring us home, so to speak.
Okay.
And I want to thank everybody for being here with us. This is such a beautiful conversation. You were on the USG podcast. We got so much feedback, so many comments. This Divine by Design series, that live series, will be happening starting next year. But I thought, let's start it in this year. Let's go into 2025 with a powerful bang, with wisdom and love. And I thought you were the perfect person to do that with. So thank you for ushering us into the next year. And I will leave it to you. Anything that's still there that is a message or wisdom or anything to share with us for those watching now or any time in the future.
Yeah, when you said that, Julie, it felt to me like it just kind of dropped in. So, I mean, first I'll just say thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to just share what I learned from client to client. What came in is to say to listeners, and I come across this a lot with clients. And so I'm going to say this sort of like directly to listeners. As you, everyone listening, feel a calling, and it doesn't matter what that calling is. It could be to go retool and retrain and go do something different in your life. But it also often is you've been working in a field, or you've been functioning in a certain way, and you have a brainstorm. And this brainstorm keeps growing and mushrooming. And part of you says, oh, no, that's just crazy idea and it'll never work, or nobody will be open to it. Please don't tell yourself that. Tell yourself the brainstorm is real. The brainstorm is you, your higher self, and your guides absorbing something that you're being told, you're being guided, you're being led to move forward. Try something new. Don't think it's silly. Don't think it's crazy. And trust in yourself and let it become real and bring it into the light of day on this planet, whatever that might be. And so that's my message is, listen and bring forth what's coming to you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so it is. I love that, Linda. My heart is like whoosh. I mean, if we all do that from a heart place, I mean, I can't, that's frankly why we're doing this. That's why I'm doing this. Beautiful message. Beautiful message. I'm going to put it back up again. What I heard you say is trust in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trust your wisdom.
Trust your wisdom. Yes. Thank you so much. What a rich conversation today. And, and I'll make sure, again, we have all the links. So if anyone wants to work with you or find out more about the work you do, and we'll also link the other interview, because we went into territories today we did not cover last time. And that other interview had some areas, but I think today we really got even deeper and took so many questions that we've been, I keep getting over and over again. I was like, we've got to do this. And we'll just say for anyone who wants to leave, more feedback or questions, we'll make sure to answer as best as we can. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for showing up as a earth-based soul who is here to make a beautiful, positive impact. And thank you to all of our community, our family that are listening, wherever you're from, right? Interplanetary, angelic, earth, you're loved. You're here. We're here.
You're needed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're needed. Exactly.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah. Thank you for doing what you do. Yeah.
It's I can't not do it. So whatever that is, that is, I've made that decision in this lifetime. And I believe we all have that ability.
Awesome.
Yeah, listen, thank you. Thank you. And if you're watching now live, we're wishing you a beautiful holiday season and New Year. And if you're watching this after the New Year or at any other time, may you continue to be a blessing and to be blessed. And like Dr. Linda said, trust your wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, lots of love, everybody. All right, here we go.